Just over a week ago, I put it out there. Ask me any question you like related to photography. It could be about photography techniques. It could be about gear. You ask the questions. In this video, I'm going to give you the answers. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Now this is the first Q&A that I have done on this channel, so please let me know by giving me a thumbs up or commenting below the video. And if this goes well and people enjoy it, then I'll consider making it a regular feature here on the channel. Now I did get quite a lot of questions and I've had to print them out because there's quite a few here, so I'm going to go through these. Forgive me for looking at my notes, and also please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Okay, I'm going to do my best. The very first question comes from Anuj Bishnoi. Now, the question is, I am looking for my first DSLR, Nikon D3400 or Nikon D5300, which is better? Well, the Nikon D3400 is a fairly new camera. It came out in 2016, whereas the Nikon D5300 came out in 2013. And on paper, they are very, very similar cameras. Despite the difference in age, they have the same processor, the same megapixels, and the resolution is exactly the same. So if you want it for still photography, then both cameras are going to deliver very, very similar results. If you want to do video, then the D5300, worth mentioning, has not only stereo microphones, but an external mic input as well, which means you can add an external mic, which is a much better option when you're doing videos, whereas the D3400 doesn't. You can only use the internal mic. Now, other than that, the D3400 offers 11 focus points versus 39 focus points on the Nikon D5300. And the Nikon D3400 has a fixed LCD, whereas the 5300 has an articulated LCD. But on paper, they are very, very similar cameras. The 5300 is now discontinued, so the only way you're going to get it, I guess, is if you pick it up second hand, which means it might be quite a bargain, whereas the 3400 is still a currently available model. But either camera would be good. It's whether or not you go for the newer camera or the older camera. The next question comes from Ahmed Asif, who simply asks, I want to buy my first DSLR camera. Is the D3400 from Nikon a good camera? Look, I don't think it's a big secret here. I've done a lot of videos on the D3400. I've got one, I use it a lot, and I do use other cameras as well. I'm a big Canon fan. I'm doing this video on a Canon camera. Also like my Fujifilm camera. But the D3400 as a starter's camera is ideal. It's small, it's compact, it has all the necessary features that you would need for a beginner's SLR camera. Great battery life, Bluetooth connectivity if you want to connect to your smartphone, and yet it's a great starter camera at a great price. So look, my answer to your question is yes, the D3400 is a great camera. Now, Sarai Cerna asks about lighting. What are the best settings for outdoor lighting? I recently went full manual mode and I'm still trying to figure it out. Well, look, firstly, great news that you're shooting in manual. If you really want to get good results from your camera, you have to look into using the camera manually and learn about things like shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. So great on that. Here's what I suggest, and this is assuming that you're shooting in the daytime when the light is pretty good. ISO. Set it nice and low. 200 ISO is my default. The higher the ISO, the brighter the image, but the more digital noise you will see in your image. So keep the ISO low at about 200. Aperture. Go for a large aperture. Open the aperture nice and wide to get as much light down the lens as possible. We're looking at the F number here. F 3.5 to maybe 5.6 would be ideal. Now the shutter speed. Well, this is the variance. This is going to vary quite a lot depending on how bright the day is. Start at around about 125th of a second. If it's a bright day, increase the shutter speed and keep your eye on the camera's meter, which is shown on the LCD screen on the back of the camera, but can also be seen through the viewfinder. What you've got to do is try and get the light meter balanced at the 0 for a decent exposure. If you go over to the plus side, your picture's going to be brighter. If you go into the minus, into the minus. I hope that answers your question. Now the next question is all about lenses, and in particular Nikon lenses. Minton Christian asks, in reference to Nikon lenses, which are the 3 fast lenses that I can have to complete my set of lenses, by which I can shoot macro, portrait, landscape, and even craters on the moon? Well look, I hope you've got deep pockets and you've got lots of money, because you're asking quite a lot here, but let me first start by referencing, you mentioned fast lenses. What does fast lenses actually mean? Well, generally speaking, a lens is a fast lens if it has a wide aperture, and that's because it will let more light through the lens. Now, often, not always, but the wider the aperture, the more expensive the lens. So do bear that in mind. Let's start with macro. I've had a little look at the range of macro lenses that are available for Nikon cameras. I'll be honest, I don't own one, but for best value for money, I picked out the 40mm f2.8 lens. So it's got a nice wide aperture, it's nice and fast, and at 40mm you better get nice and close to your subject. Now for portraits, you can't get past the 85mm f1.8. Now this is not a cheap lens, so if your budget is a bit more tight, you should look at the 50mm f1.8. Both fast lenses. For the moon, you're going to want a big telephoto lens. The bigger the number, the better. I would look at something that is at least 300mm long to get you nice and close. Plus, of course, you're going to need a good solid tripod. Now, you also asked about landscape. Well, I think for landscape photography, bearing in mind sometimes you might want a wider view, sometimes you might want to zoom in on particular areas of the landscape, you might want to look at a lens that offers quite a wide focal range. Now Sigma do a great range of lenses that start at around about 18mm and go up to about 200mm, which will pretty much cover most of what you're going to need. So there's a few suggestions for you. That's a lot of money we're looking at there, but hopefully I've answered your question. Now Nitish27 didn't actually ask a question, but was very kind in saying your tutorials for the D3400 were of great help. Now I'm getting vibrant, clear and almost professional looking shots. Look, thank you. Please keep watching the videos, subscribe, give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and there will be more coming. But thank you very much. Now I'm going to have struggle with this one. Satyajit Mandi, again, sorry if I've got this wrong. Being a beginner using the Nikon D3400, can you suggest some good lenses for wildlife photography? Well, generally with wildlife photography, you want to get nice and close to your subject, but often with wildlife photography, you can't physically get nice and close to your subject. So I'm going to suggest a zoom telephoto lens. Something like maybe the 70 to 200mm lens would be great. I've got one here. This is not a cheap lens. This is the 70 to 200mm f2.8 lens. So it's got a wide aperture, it's very fast, pin sharp, and that is a fantastic lens. If you're on more of a budget, then I've looked up the what's available from Nikon, and the 70 to 300mm VR is a great lens for wildlife photography at a really reasonable budget. Now Drake Bartoloi asks about the Canon SL2 versus the Nikon D3400 for beginners photography. Well, either would be a good choice, to be honest. They're designed for beginners. They're both great cameras. I've got them both. But I am a Nikon fan, so the D3400 would be my choice. Also, you ask, should I buy the camera body only and then add the 50mm f1.8 lens? Yes, the 50mm f1.8 lens is a prime lens, has a large wide aperture. It's fantastic, and I think everybody should have at least one good prime lens in their kit. But look, if you're going to buy the D3400 and there's not a massive saving between going body only or buying it with the kit lens, I'd probably buy the camera with the kit lens. That's the 18 to 55mm lens usually, and then just add the 50mm on top. That way you've got a little bit more flexibility. Now the next question comes all the way from Puerto Rico. I hope I get this one right. Joseph Figura says he has a Nikon D3400. He's happy with it. He's glad that I'm doing videos on it, but he's got three main problems. Focusing, first of all. Pictures are coming out blurry. Okay, so look, I don't know exactly how you got your camera set up, but I would use autofocus. I would learn how to control the focus points so you can specifically tell the camera where to focus. If you've not seen it already, I did a video all about this subject. I'll put a link somewhere up here for you to check out. What else? Focus mode. The Nikon camera has 2 key focus modes to use. Check out AFS for when you're shooting things that don't move, like a landscape maybe. And check out AFC when you're photographing things that do move. So providing you're actually setting your focus points up correctly, and you've got your focus mode correctly, depending on the subject, and of course you're pressing the button halfway down, your camera should focus no problem at all. Common problem is getting too close. Again, I don't know what you're doing, but if you're too close, the lens won't focus anyway, but hopefully those help. You also ask about taking photos at night. Well, firstly, I hope you've got a tripod because you're going to be using slow shutter speeds. If you're taking photos at night, try putting the camera in the TV mode if you've got a Canon, which will be S on your Nikon D3400, and dropping the shutter speed down to maybe a few seconds, maybe 5 seconds or 10 seconds if it's somewhere really dark. Also keep the ISO really low so you don't get any digital noise, and the camera, because you're in the shutter priority mode, will take care of the aperture for you. Also think about investing in a remote device for your camera as well. Lastly, speed flash. Well, look, flash is a big topic. I don't think we're going to have time to cover it here, and you don't mention what particular problems you're having. But to be honest, assuming that you're a beginner, stay off the flash for now. Try and work out how to set the camera up so you can get the best from the ambient light that is already available. Maybe I'll do a video on flash sometime in the near future. If you want to see that, give us a thumbs up, leave some comments down below. But I hope that helps out, Puerto Rico. Sharanga Rao, again, sorry if I made a hash of the pronunciation, asks a question. Please tell me how to background blur using the video mode with a Canon 1300D. Well, look, to be honest, it doesn't matter too much whether you're using a Canon camera, Nikon, Fuji, or whatever. If you want the background to go blurry, I'm going to give you 3 tips. Number 1, get closer to the subject. When you bring the camera closer to the subject, you will create a shallow depth of field and the background will start to soften. Don't get too close or the lens won't be able to focus. Number 2, extend the lens. If your lens is a zoom lens, make the lens a bit longer. Dial in a slightly larger focal length because the longer a lens, the more shallow the depth of field. And if you haven't already got one, consider picking up a prime lens. For the Canon, the Nifty 50, that's the Canon 50mm f1.8 lens, is an absolute killer lens that is perfect for still photography as well as video. I did a video all about it. I'll put a link up here for you to check out. But try those things out and hopefully you'll get better blur in your videos. Next up is a question from Balasubramanian Ramalingam. Hope I got that right. Who asks about micro SD cards. The question is it possible to use micro SD cards with an SDHC adapter in DSLR cameras? Look, to be honest, I don't know. I've got micro SD cards that I use in my my drone and also my GoPro. Haven't actually tried them in the DSLR, but I see no reason why they shouldn't work. So give it a go, see what happens, maybe do some Googling. But to be honest, this is one of those questions that I actually don't have an answer for. I'm sorry, but thanks for asking. I recorded the Q&A video earlier on today. Now it's later in the afternoon and I'm putting the edit together, and it's only now that I realised that this is looking like a 30-minute video, which is a little bit excessive for YouTube. So I've decided to split this into 2 videos. This is the end of part 1. Q&A part 2 will follow. I'm going to upload it the day after, so by the time you watch this it may already be available. You'll find a link at the end of the video. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Make sure you check out part 2. I have made an effort to answer every single question, hence the videos are extremely long. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, leave your comments below. See you on the other side for part 2. See ya!